Let's take a look at the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid, and we congratulate the Armour All Pole Award winner, Garth Tander, his 5th V8 supercar career pole. He did a fine job in the Toll HSV machine, and he shares that front row with Mark Scaife, who felt as though he very nearly could have done it. Lowndes and Ingle on the second row. Ingle is buoyed by his qualifying position. So too, the two Ford Performance Racing Falcons. Bright and Winterbottom, what a turnaround from the Clipsal 500. They are extremely well placed, and yes, that is a WPS Ford in the top 10. Max Wilson did an outstanding job. Hello everyone, I'm Lee Diffie along with Greg Russ, Daryl Beattie. We say hi to Neil Crompton. Neil, a lot of talk this weekend, not necessarily about this first race, but the second one coming up.
Yes, everybody in the pit paddock is talking about that one, Lee. It's certainly going to be fascinating because 10 of the 13 rounds in 2006 are the sprint race format, which means that the middle race, race 2, will represent a reverse grid, the finishing order of this race 1 today. Man of the match in qualifying was Max Wilson, who ended up posting a time to get into the top 10, so great news for WPS. It's the 20th time in 50-odd races that Max has been in the shootout, and so looking forward to a good result. He had a bit of strife in the shootout itself, but still a very strong performance. Full field of cars, 31 of them. Steve Owen, Mark Porter joins the series for this round 2. There's Marcus Marshall in the Glenfords Ford, position 31. Mitsubishi Fuso grid. That's the sweep looking through the entire order.
And there has been some action this weekend, like you wouldn't believe. Many cars have run off track. It's a tricky little circuit, this one, as we take you through our various onboard cameras. Jason Bargwanna in the WPS Ford. He's had a pretty decent weekend so far. Not as good as his teammate Max Wilson, but things are definitely on the up for that team. Stephen Richards, a little frustrated. He didn't make the top 10 shootout, but will be strong here in the Jack Daniels Commodore, coming off the back of 2 very good wins in the support events at the Australian Grand Prix. And here's the hero of the moment, Greg Murphy. They love him here at Pukekohe. He's a little frustrated, feels the car isn't quite where he wants it to be. And another one of the 6 Kiwi drivers, Jason Richards for Tasman Motorsport. And here he is, the defending champion, Russell Ingall. He was fastest at the end of the 2.5-hour free practice session yesterday. He was thrilled with that, and he's carried on with a very good top 10 shootout position to be on the second row.
They've made strong gains with the Stone Brothers Racing Caltex Ford this weekend after a difficult couple of races at the Clipsal 500 and also at the Australian Grand Prix support events. Craig Lowndes, he was certainly one of the key players when it came time for the business end of qualifying and then the shootout. And the point that we make at this racetrack each and every year, Lee, is that it is so unbelievably close at the top of the field. Tander's time of 55.72, 7/100ths of a second back this man, Mark Scaife. Unbelievable.
You can hear it. It's getting serious. Ready to go for the first of 3 here in New Zealand. 36 laps. Tander's on your left, Scaife is on your right, and Lowndes and Ingle are watching.
Gee, they seem to be holding there for a long time. Someone stalled. One of the toll cars, I think, was left back there.
Rick Kelly, look at Ingle, goes attacks on the inside. Poleman will lead them through. Scaife tucks into second, then it's Ingle.
Trouble at turn 1. In the background of the shot there's a car sideways. And no doubt the field was scattered a little by the problem at the start line, so already big gaps in the midfield there.
Garth Tander stretches his legs for the first time up the back straight in the Toll HSV Commodore, and it's Cameron McConville for Super Cheap Auto Racing.
And there's another car actually up against the wall, not far from our commentary point. I think it's Greg Murphy, believe it or not, after an incredible run here for many years. Greg Murphy is in the wall on the approach to turn 1.
They're scattering, they're scrambling. And there is Murphy's car, it is crunched. What a shame for Murph. So many thousands of fans come here specifically to see him.
Safety car has intervened and Murphy's being helped from the car. There was a delay here this afternoon in the Carrera Cup race when a car unfortunately made heavy impact with the wall and climbed the fence. Such was the damage that part of the grandstand's actually been vacated. And there's Murphy and his team looking on. He's been winded. The car's resting backwards against the wall.
And let's see if this will help us. The Zinger replay. Watch to the right of your screen.
It was Rick.
And his brother did a very good job to avoid him.
And
I think someone rejoined late there, didn't they?
The cars scattering every which way. Now look down the order, it'll see what happens to Greg. He's already gone around here. We don't know why. That's
his teammate.
Both the super cheap cars there. That's a lot of damage on the front of Greg's car.
So has he hit another car or hit the Armco? You'd say he's hit the Armco by the look of it.
Cam McConville comes in. We still don't know precisely what's unfolded here at turn 1, but I venture to say that it was all triggered from Rick Kelly stalling at the start line at the start of this 36-lap race.
And the call there was, come on in, mate. We'll put 4 new tyres and we will take a look for Cameron McConville. And a tough start for Super Cheap Auto Racing. Then Scaife. There's a big gap back to Russell Ingall, who maintains third as they come through that area, the crash area of Cameron McConville and Greg Murphy. Lowndes maintains fourth ahead of Bright.
And remember, they did very little in the way of racing, so what little temperature they had, they've well and truly lost. And these tyres are stone cold. They've pressured down a little, and they've got no tread face temperature, so they've got to be careful with the aggression in this opening flying lap to not ask too much of the brake performance of the car or the tyre performance of the car and then overstep the mark. Look at this.
That's Max Wilson fending off Jamie Whincup. Whincup, who lost some positions off the start.
Oh, and around goes Paul Radisich at the turn 5 hairpin exit. So the Team Kiwi Racing entry pointing the wrong way on the exit of the southern hairpin, and there he is with some damage to the bonnet of that car. Right mirror is also crushed down.
He's been in the wars this year, Paul Radisich, hasn't he? The first race at the Clipsal 500 and now the first race here at Pukekohe. High hopes to do well. Steve Owen on the inside of Warren Luff. The Autobahn Commodore gets the Fujitsu Ford. Down into turn 1. Now he needs to hang on to it. That's a popular runoff spot. But Owen does a good job.
56.7 for Garth Tander on that lap. Mark Scaife's just done the fastest first sector split at 14.4. To give you an idea of how that compares with qualifying performance, the fastest man of the weekend so far in the first sector, Russell Ingall, did a 14.0 yesterday. So they'll just bring their minds and their cars into phase here as everything comes up to temperature. Here's the Zinger replay. Look for Radisich down the order a bit. Nose to tail contact. One of the Dick Johnson Racing Fords seemed to be involved in that. Here it is again from the other angle on the outside of the corner. Always a trouble spot round here.
It's the 18 of Will Davison immediately behind in the V8 Telecom Ford. Greg.
Some pit stops ready to get underway here, boys. The HSV dealer team, the Holden Racing team, 888 are ready to go. It looks like Tander, Lowndes and Todd Kelly all on standby for pit stops. I've had a word to Steve Henderson in the interim. It sounds as though Greg Murphy has been taken for precautionary checks to the medical centre here at Pukekohe Park, and also his teammate Cameron McConville. The dramas in the pit stops, Cam apparently took evasive action in that incident, and he felt he may have flat spotted all 4 tyres. When he came to pit lane, the team wanted to manage the bank of rubber and put the worst rubber they could on the car at this point in time. There's a bit of unfortunate drama. They dropped the car off the jacks just a fraction too early.
Garth Tander, a problem there in the stop, and Rob Crawford was howling on the radio. They've chosen to do the left side tyres only on the Toll HSV dealer team car. That leaves Scaife in the lead of the race. Fastest lap of the race so far to Scaife. 1.3 second margin on board here with Craig Lowndes. Darryl.
Hello.
We've got you, mate. Fire away.
Yeah, sorry, guys. A bit noisy. Tander, like you mentioned, Neil down the left-hand side, and Todd both rear tyres. I just spoke to the Toll team, and those guys were saying that Rick did have clutch problems, but the car initially stalled before the start of that race, Neil, and Rick was telling us before the race he's having problems even just starting that car through practice, so they've got some issues there.
And another guy who's got issues, Darryl, is Garth Tander, who's been adjudged to have jumped the start. He will get a drive-through penalty in the number 16 car. Last year he had troubles here, remember, he got pinged and ended up at the back of the pack, and Jamie Whincup has gone off in the 888 Falcon. In the tyre barrier. It's all happening in New Zealand. He's down there on the exit of turn 5.
And he's lost a lot of positions. He was in the top 10. In fact, he was 5th. And he is right at the tail end of this field, the championship leader. That is a huge blow. Here's the Zinger replay.
At first blush, it looks like he may have outbraked himself on the inside down there at 5. And then to compound it, he's arrowed up the inside. They've all given him space. Winterbottom ducked out of the way. You can probably see him in his mirror. And then he's just picked up the edge of the sand down there and then need to do a 3-point turn to keep it off the tyre belt on the outside of 5.
There's the drive-through penalty for the previous race leader, Garth Tander. Well, that's 2 rounds, 2 drive-throughs for jumping the start for the Toll team. 1 for Rick Kelly in Adelaide, 1 for Tander here in Pukekohe. That will make him livid. Here's his teammate. Compulsory stop, done.
100th start in V8 Supercar competition this weekend for Garth Tander. Jamie Whincup takes his stop, and an opportunity for them to do a bit of a gravel check on that car and just make sure that the radiator intake and the brake ducts are clear and clean. Get some clean rubber on that car. Look at the debris on the track there between 3 and 4. Tander is 100th start. Andrew Jones also has been shown a black flag for overlapping at the restart, not staying in formation before the control line when we went back to green flag racing.
The order is Scaife, Ingle, Jason Bright, Stephen Richards. As we watch Scaife now duck up the inside, not quite close enough on Jason Richards. James Courtney is up to 5th, Paul Morris is 6th, Coulthard, McConville, Brad Jones and Warren Luff. Now here's Scaife in, race leader is in.
5% throttle, change your CPS slide off. Make sure the jack's on rear.
Make sure the jacks are on the rear. They're going to do rear tyres only, so Mark has positional opportunities to change the way the car is picked up once they couple the air.
Mate, once the car drops, should be clear to go, mate. Should be clear straight to go.
And counselling him about a low percentage of throttle so the car doesn't pop and bang its way down the lane at the 40k prescribed limit in first gear. Here he is. Rears only. We've already seen some people do left side only, so a difference in tyre strategy.
Watch your throttle.
Been somewhat of a frustrating weekend for HRT this weekend, with Mark not very happy with the car yesterday. The crew worked a long day yesterday. They received a $20,000 suspended fine for freighting equipment in excess of their allocation. There are no transporters here this weekend. All the cars were freighted over in the planes. It was like when we went to Shanghai last year. They could only bring a certain amount of equipment.
Yeah, nominated list of components that could be brought or fitted within those containers. Brought across very efficiently again by Gibson Freight, who did all the work for the Chinese round last year, and they'll be used again later in the year for Bahrain. I won't go through the bits while we've got such a hot motor race on, but there's a vast list of components, but they unfortunately decided to ship something separately. They've copped a suspended sentence as Russell Ingle comes in for his compulsory pit stop. Garth Tander got fined $5,000 for his trouble with Todd Kelly in Melbourne as well. Ingle in. Rears only.
Unlike Adelaide, these compulsory pit stops are just for tyres. It's a short race, and Ingle comes back out in front of Bright. They are nose to tail. And Scaife whizzes on by.
So in net terms, he holds his position.
Where did Ingle and Bright come out in relation to Lowndes? We'll keep an eye on that.
That little black device that you can see on the left-hand side of that shot is what's called the TIGA camera, Touring Car Entrance Group of Australia camera. All the cars have them to record every single lap of the race in case they're required for judicial later on. Greg?
Well, Greg Murphy is understandably headed to the motorhome. He's a little disappointed right now, John Panozzo. What did he tell us? You're the team boss here. What did he tell us about what unfolded in that first corner?
He did mention that he got his words, drilled from behind. So obviously there's been a bit of contact from behind. And the cars, quickly turned left, I think it was, and into the wall and sustained fairly substantial damage. Looks like both shotgun panels are forced down onto the tyres, so she's going to be a lot of work. We'll have to get it back in the shed here tonight and get it apart and have a bit better look at it.
The car, as you said, has just literally turned up moments ago at the back very quickly. This is a flyaway round. Have you got enough gear here, do you think, to repair this car, 51?
Hard to make a call right now. If I was to guess, I'd say no. But, it's amazing what the TAFE guys can do. They're here this weekend. We'll give it a red-hot go because, every point is valuable in this championship and, we'll do our best.
Fingers crossed, guys.
And those boys, like many other teams, have been working excruciatingly long hours in the early part of this season because there have been so many damaged race cars. That one was a rebuild. Greg Murphy's car had been refreshed, rebuilt after extensive damage in Adelaide.
Almost all of the leading teams suffered some kind of substantial wound in either the first or the second race meeting this year. Super Cheap Auto, Ford Performance Racing, Stone Brothers Racing, the Holden Racing team, HSV dealer team. Remarkable. About the only guys that didn't have too much trauma of the front-running group were Triple Eight, with both Whincup and Lowndes.
Todd Kelly fending off Mark Winterbottom. An inspired Mark Winterbottom. Best ever V8 qualifying position today. Good to see him in the top 10.
Nice and smooth, mate. Nice and smooth. 22 laps to go.
And Todd Kelly receiving some coaching, some encouragement from Matt Crawford, saying, well done, that's the way to do it. And this is how much longer you've got to run.
He had a good run yesterday in the first extended practice session, but then just didn't come together for him in qualifying, and he didn't make the shootout today. And I spoke to Matthew to find out what the issue was with the car. He said, look, we don't think the car's too bad, but for whatever reason, we didn't get a very good run with the red flag interventions in qualifying, and Todd just didn't quite hit the nail on the head. And as a result, we're just back in the order. But they know it's a long run this weekend, and they have to manage that second race. That reverse grid race is going to be critical to the outcome of this event.
Winterbottom is hanging with him. He's doing well. Thinks about an inside run there in turn 4, which you have seen in the past. You need to be a little bit closer than that, though.
It's been a bit of a bogey track for Todd Kelly. Had difficulty here last year, but very encouraging run here for Ford Performance Racing. Mark Winterbottom and Jason Bright have been very competitive all weekend. Winterbottom looked very strong in certain portions of both free practice and qualifying, and he is hot on the heels there of the HRT number 22 car. There's Lowndes.
These are the cars yet to stop for their compulsory stop. Morris, McConville, Steve Owen, Porter, Luff, and Stephen Richards has just completed his stop. So Mark Scaife is 6th in the order, but he is the man they're all chasing.
And there's Stephen Richards just slotting back in front of that group. And one of the great challenges at this racetrack, because of the very short lap time interval round here, sub 60 seconds, you don't need to be very far from the lead of the motor race to ultimately end up being trapped a lap down if the safety car intervenes and you haven't taken your stop. And that's always a gamble here. Depending on how much traffic you're encountering, sometimes it's not a bad idea to consider running long before you take that compulsory pit stop. The danger is, though, if the safety car's deployed and you haven't been able to get that out of the way and the field compresses, then your day is done. Compulsory pit stop window open between laps 5. It closes lap 25, so between laps 5 and 25. We're still a little way off that at the moment as Stephen Richards just gets normalised tyre temperature and pressure into the Jack Daniels Holden at turn 7.
Fast approaching the halfway mark of this first of 3 races. If you've just joined us, reminding you that race 2 this weekend is a full reverse grid. If you finish last, you start first. Haven't done that in the V8 Supercar Championship Series since 2002. And there is some question marks. There are some question marks. Some drivers and teams are for it, some aren't. We'll find out in race 2 whether it's a success or not. One thing's for sure, there's sure to be plenty of action.
This car number 23, trouble there. And that's, pardon me, Andrew Jones, who's gone off between turns 2 and 3. And time and again, that little slice of this racetrack bites people. That generally brings a lot of debris onto the road as well. Here's Lowndes buying into this battle.
Lowndes is doing it tough at the moment. He's in 14th place. Well down the order. When you consider he qualified 3rd, there are obviously some issues there. Morris, McConville, Owen, Porter and Luff. Still those 5 yet to stop. You're watching Jason Bargwanna, Stephen Johnson. This is in 15th, 16th place at the moment. And James Courtney not too far behind them.
Problems yesterday for James Courtney. They had a small fire under the bonnet in the early part of that extended practice session, and then later in the session he was trapped, like many drivers this weekend, on the dirt between turns 2 and 3, and he went off and nudged the wall. So minor repair damage last night for Stone Brothers Racing. So he lost valuable track time. I think he got 28 laps of a maximum available 50 yesterday. And he's never been to New Zealand before. Here's Paul Morris. He was leading the motor race. He's taken his compulsory stop.
So the Team Suramay Commodore is done. Just finishing off on Courtney. He did make significant progress, though. In the end of free practice, he was 24th. He managed to qualify 15th. Not too bad a job. heading in the right direction. This group still fight it out. Courtney's at the back of that. And Morris rejoins the Pukekohe circuit.
McConville, Steve Owen, Porter, Luff, those 4 cars have yet to take their compulsory stop, and then it's Scaife, Ingle, Bright, Stephen Richards, Todd Kelly, Mark Winterbottom, Max Wilson, Paul Dumbrell, Craig Lowndes.
Beautiful weather conditions, perfect to go racing in. However, the weather for races 2 and 3 expected to be not so good. The Zinger replay shows us Andrew Jones.
We see him arriving backwards at turn 3. Remember, he'd already taken a drive-through penalty for not staying in formation prior to the control line at the restart. It's on here. Yep. Courtney is battling there with Jason Richards. We're going to take a break and we'll turn to the V8 supercar action in New Zealand in just a moment.
Meanwhile, Stephen Richards has made significant progress, started 11th, running 4th, and is in a very solid position.
I wonder whether Jason Richards had a power steering failure and went off, or whether he went off and then had a power steering failure. That'll be an interesting question to ask after this race. And it's made it very difficult for him, and I imagine that they would probably have a pretty strong weekend. But on the subject of strong weekends, great performance here from Mark Winterbottom. 5th at the moment, in front of Lowndes, behind Stephen Richards. There's Craig in the background, and this is encouraging. I think that race meeting in Adelaide for this group must have been one of the most frustrating race meetings that you could imagine for a race team. Damage and trauma all weekend. It seemed to be a never-ending war zone for them.
They've forgotten about it. Well, they want to forget about it. That's what they said earlier. As we look at the WPS Ford of Max Wilson, he and his teammate have done pretty well. Bargwanna's come from 19th to 12th. He's just outside the top 10. Powering on.
Just to confirm your thoughts there with Jason Richards, Neil, I just asked the team again and they said he had the steering failure, or the power steering failure, and then he ran off afterwards.
Okay, thanks for that, Daryl. So that clears that up, and that's the reason why we saw all the dirt and debris coming out of the front of the car. And as you said before, that would not be pleasant running around there with so much odd steering geometry and front-end geometry on these cars as James Courtney sneaks up the inside of Todd Kelly.
Dumbrell gets there as well.
They've got so much caster and so much negative camber that when you don't have the assistance of the power steering on the cars, they're almost undrivable.
Kelly's in trouble. Todd Kelly's in big trouble. There he goes. He went off. I saw him slow out of the hairpin. He's in major trouble. Goes into pit lane with just 5 laps remaining. That's a shame. He was running in the top 10. Well placed in 8th. But it looks like day done for Todd Kelly. And he is limping. That car's come to a stop.
There's something going on inside the cabin. You can see the back of the screen looks bad, or the front of the screen's bad. Yeah, it's full of smoke. And Matt said, shut it off and get out of there.
Lucky in relation to where he was. That's just on the entrance to pit lane. What a shame for Todd Kelly. And off goes Stephen Richards. That's our 4th place man. And that's at the top of the hairpin at the end of the back straight. With just 5 to go, Richards has lost the top 5 spot.
Remember, he was battling in position 4 between Bright and Winterbottom, and Jason Richards is off the road down there again, probably struggling to turn that car, I imagine.
And that puts Mark Winterbottom up into a 4th. It's FPR 3 and 4. They will be doing handstands. Lowndes has come from 14th to now be in the top 5. And here it is. Stephen Richards went off all by himself.
Pressure motor racing out there, people making little errors, but I wonder whether there's oil on the road from Todd Kelly's car. Remember that we saw him pull off in this vicinity just after turn 5. He went to the pit lane. We saw oil smoke in the cabin. Even if there's a couple of drops on the road down there, it may have trapped Stephen Richards.
Yeah. Daryl?
Guys, I got Todd Kelly here. Todd, there's a lot of smoke and steam. Your windscreen's all fogged up. What's happened with the car?
Well, I lost the power steering about lap 4. Started jamming up, which is pretty hairy around here. I was a bit afraid of a thing just behind us here. And
I was watching you off the last turn here, and you were running wide, yeah?
And up the other end, it was jamming as well. And then something's obviously gone because it's actually pushing against me now. And just then, a heap of smoke came in the car, and a heap of coolants ended up in the car as well. And I thought it was on fire. It was quite hot, so there was no way I was going to bring it home. I was trying my best, but just couldn't.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks.
Guys, I look at Todd's car here in pit lane as well, and you look on the entry, there's a lot of fluid on the road, so maybe that's something to do with Stephen Richards as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised if the reason Stephen Richards went off down there was the fluid on the road. And Jason Richards is back in the pit lane again, and obviously the power steering drama he has is causing grief. Margins down to 2.3 seconds between Scaife and Ingle. Russell's getting a little closer thanks to the traffic. There he is, he's looming. 57.6 that lap for Mark Scaife, a 57.1 for Russell Ingle. 1.7 seconds now is the margin.
Time running out though. Last 3 laps for Ingle if he's going to do anything about Scaife. So determined in 2006 to defend his V8 supercar title. Wants to do it desperately. And there is the stationary car of Todd Kelly, the Holden Racing team.
Don't need too much of that stuff on the road to upset your threshold braking at the end of a big braking stop like this one where Mark is at the moment.
Scaife gets by Warren Luff, and Ingle's trying to do the same to Steve Owen, exiting the hairpin. So now there's some traffic for Ingle, but there's nothing between these two with just 2 laps to run here at Pukekohe.
Great recovery from Lowndes in 5th place. Now, can Russell sneak down here? Does Steve give him a little bit of space? I spoke to him yesterday about all that trauma that he had in Adelaide, where Steve Owen was overcome with the heat in that race car and in that race. And it was a fascinating discussion to hear him describing just how incredibly hot he was and just how badly knocked around. And he literally can't remember much of the motor race, woke up in hospital, and in many respects is fortunate to have got away with it as he did. Here's Russell Ingle making a move on him now, about to put 1 lap on him, looking for space down the inside. He'll try and grab Luff down there as well.
Gets by 1, still 1 left to go for Russell Ingle. Closing laps.
Margin 1.23 seconds last time through for Scaife and Ingle.
If he can hang on, it'll be Scaife's first win since Bathurst last year. And his first win here in 3 years. Back on board with Ingle, trying to get by Warren Luff.
Always very, very difficult to do down here on the run to turn 1. 1.6 seconds. The gap's opened, and Ross Stone, frustration on his face because he knows that this is a costly situation with Warren Luff just in front at the moment, making sure that it's difficult for Russell to close down the margin to Scaife. Like he's actually moved to protect his line down there, Warren Luff, which is interesting. I wonder whether he'll just let him blow by down the outside. Yes, he has, and that way Russell can stay on the race line.
Now he's got Jason Richards in between he and Scaife. Coming up for the final lap, and off goes Jason Richards.
He can't get it around the hairpin. He just literally needs Popeye arms to be able to do that job, and he doesn't have them.
Final 2.8k. Scaife sees a clear track ahead.
Well done, mate. Great drive.
And gets it. Scaife wins at Pukekohe from Russell Ingle. He closed the gap so close, couldn't quite get there in the end. And Jason Bright will get that 3rd position to be on the podium in race 1. And Mark Winterbottom, and there are the boys, Chris O'Toole in the middle, and the FPR men, they celebrate a podium. Robbie Starr thrilled with his man for victory. And that is nice work. As we go to the VB scoreboard and take a look at the results, it was close in the end. Look at it, 1.4 seconds between the arch rivals Scaife and Ingle. And the teammates Bright and Winterbottom, a fine performance, and Lowndes to be in the top 5. And a much needed top 10 for James Courtney ahead of Steve Johnson and Paul Dumbrell. Those guys had a tremendous scrap as we roll through to the boys who had a tougher start to this New Zealand weekend.